You already own it. Or your mother did. Or your grandmother did. A cheap blue and green box under the sink, quiet as chalk, older than half the products in the garden aisle. And the bugs eating your tomatoes, the ants in your pantry, the mildew crawling across your squash leaves, the worm tunneling into your apples. Do not care how glossy the label is on the bottle you almost bought this morning. What matters is whether you know what still works. And I am going to give you 11 ways plain old borax has been used in gardens, sheds, orchards, and houses by people who knew how to stretch a dollar without giving up results. Not internet gimmicks, not miracle talk. Old uses, measured uses, the kind that stayed alive because they solved real problems. And the last one, the 11th, is the one almost nobody gets told anymore. That one is the real reason I am making this video. So stay with me, because it is worth hearing all the way through. Before we start, tell me down in the comments what state you are gardening in and what pest or problem is winning the war this year. Ants, slugs, mildew, codling moth. Whatever it is, put it down there. I read more of those comments than you probably think, and a lot of the time the next video starts right there. I still remember being about 7 years old, standing on a milk crate beside my mother at the kitchen sink in Lancaster County, watching her stir warm water, sugar, and a little white powder in a jelly jar. The ants had found the bread box. By morning, the trail was gone. She did not run to the store. She did not buy a trap. She did not need a man in a truck. She just knew what to use, how much to use, and where to set it. That powder was borax. Now let me say the part that matters before anybody gets too excited and starts treating this like a magic powder. The whole point with borax is measured use. Old-timer knowledge worked because it was precise, not because people dumped the stuff on everything in sight. A little where it belongs can help. Too much where it does not belong can burn, repel, simply turn a smart fix into a stupid one. That line matters. The first use is still the best place to begin because it tells you exactly why old knowledge beats panic. Ants. Not because borax drops them dead on contact, because it does not. Half a teaspoon, 9 teaspoons of sugar, 1 cup of hot water. Stir until it clears. Pour it into a little bait station or soak a cotton ball and set it right on the trail. Then leave the trail alone. Do not spray the scouts. Do not wipe the line. Do not get impatient and turn a colony problem back into a kitchen problem. The University of California's IPM guidance still says the same basic thing old kitchens taught a long time ago. When borate baits are kept weak enough to stay attractive, the workers keep carrying them back into the colony, and that is what gives the bait real reach. Push the concentration too high, and the ants start avoiding it. That is the first lesson right there. Cheap fix is not only cheaper, a lot of the time it is smarter. And once you understand that, you start seeing the whole garden aisle a little differently. Because the big brands cannot sell you a $40 answer very easily if you already know a $2 mineral can solve part of the problem from your own cupboard. So, what do they do instead? They separate every nuisance into its own little purchase. A bait for this, a spray for that, a trap for something else. $15 here, $30 there, $40 the next time around. A tidy little parade of purchases. Meanwhile, the plain answer sits under your sink in a paper box and waits for someone to remember it. That kind of forgetting is not always innocent. Some knowledge disappears because it fails. Other knowledge disappears because it is too plain, too cheap, and too hard to package. Walk outside after one damp night, and you can tell exactly where the slugs have been. Hosta leaves chewed thin. Lettuce ragged at the edges. Strawberries spoiled before you ever got to enjoy them. Soft-bodied pests live by moisture. A thin, dry ring around the base of a plant, not on the stem, not on the leaves, and refreshed after rain. can make that crossing a lot harder for them. It is not dramatic. It is not flashy. Some of the best garden knowledge never was. And once you start paying attention, you notice borax was never just a pantry trick. It kept turning up around old houses because people understood materials better than we do now. Fleas brought in on the dog, roaches in warm, hidden spaces behind the stove, mold on the cellar wall, mildew where the sun never quite reaches, weeds in the cracks by the milk house or the back step. Not because borax was magic, because people knew what it did. It dries, it disrupts, it changes conditions. It can make a place less hospitable to soft-bodied pests and less welcoming to certain infestations. In tiny amounts, it can even correct a missing micronutrient in the soil. Same powder. Completely different outcome. Depends on whether the person using it has any discipline. That, I think, is what has really gone missing. People know product names now. They know the shape of the bottle. They know what aisle to walk down, but they do not always know the material itself. What it is, how it works, when it helps, when it crosses the line. Older households had a different kind of literacy. They did not think in brands first. They thought in materials. Take fleas. Anyone who has had a dog bring them in from the yard knows how quickly that becomes a whole house problem. The adults you see are only part of it. The eggs and larvae down in the carpet pile are the real nuisance. Fine borax worked into the fibers to sit, then vacuumed out was one of those plain old solutions people used, because it got down where the problem actually lived. Same with roaches. And here again, the science has not gone off in a completely different direction. Texas A&M's extension guidance on boric acid dust makes the same practical point old households knew from experience. Light applications matter. Roaches avoid heavy piles of dust, but a very light deposit can cling to the body and get swallowed later during grooming. So the trick is not more powder. It is less, placed better. That is a very old kind of intelligence. Not a thick white panic line behind the stove. Just enough. That phrase could explain half of what made these old methods work. Just enough. Now, where borax gets more interesting, at least to me, is where it stops being only about pests and starts becoming a piece of missing garden literacy. Because some of you are not fighting ants at all. Some of you are standing in the garden, looking at plants that ought to be healthier than they are. Squash, leaves going gray-white with mildew. Cucumbers fading halfway through the season. Cauliflower with ugly brown centers. Beets turning corky. Apples pitting. Tomatoes blooming but dropping flowers instead of setting fruit. A garden that looks close to right, but never quite gets there. And that is where the old measured uses matter again. For powdery mildew, the rhythm is simple. 1 teaspoon of borax, 1 tablespoon of cooking oil, 1 gallon of water. Shake it hard. Spray the tops and bottoms of the leaves before the sun gets on them, 3 times. 4 days apart. Slow enough to be careful. Direct enough to actually do something. Not every vine comes back. I am not going to promise you that. I have seen people rip out plants that still had life in them because they assumed a gray-white leaf meant the season was over. Sometimes it is over. Sometimes you were one Saturday morning away from buying yourself another few weeks. And then there is the part hardly anybody gets told anymore unless they stumble into an old bulletin, an older farmer, or both. Borax in very small amounts is not only a pest story, it is also a boron story. Boron is a micronutrient, tiny need, real need, and when that need is not being met, fruiting plants can act strange in ways people misread all the time. Oregon State's fertilizer guidance is very plain about that. When soil tests show boron is low, they recommend borax at a measured rate, guessed at handful, 1 pound, 1,000 square feet. Used because the soil test says it is needed, Not because the gardener got hopeful and doubled the dose. That is the tone I trust. Calm. Exact. No miracle language. 1 pound. 1,000 square feet. Or, put another way, a whisper. Not a shout. A lot of modern gardeners throw nitrogen at everything. Or they buy another bloom booster because the package promises more fruit. Or they blame the weather because weather is always handy. And sometimes it is the weather. Sometimes it is the variety. But sometimes the ground is simply short on one trace element, and nobody taught them how to think that way. That is why I keep coming back to this idea that the loss was cultural before it was practical. We did not just lose a trick. We lost the habit of knowing what materials do. And borax has one of the strangest, most American histories you could ask for. People hear 20 Mule Team and think it was just old branding on a box. The history under it is real. Death Valley's Harmony Borax Works sent borax out across the Mojave by 20 mule teams over a haul of roughly 165 miles to the rail connection at Mojave. That was not a slogan first. It was a transportation problem first. National Park Service still tells that story at Harmony Borax Works. And Francis Marion Smith, who later acquired the works and built the Pacific Coast Borax Empire, helped turn that brutal desert logistics story into one of the most recognizable industrial images in the country. So when you pick up that quiet little box now, you are not holding some trendy hack from the internet. You are holding a mineral with a long, hard, practical history behind it. Mined, hauled, sold, and then slowly pushed to the edges of household knowledge as chemical retail culture learned how to make more money by multiplying the number of products and reducing the number of things people actually understood. And that brings me to the 11th use. The one I told you to stay for. This is the one almost nobody gets told anymore. Not in a garden center. Not in a catalog. Not even, usually, in casual gardening talk. I only heard it because my wife's father, a beekeeper and orchard man up near Sugar Creek, Ohio, sat me down one September afternoon and told it to me the way a man tells you something he does not toss around lightly. Codling moth, the worm in the apple, the brown tunnel to the core. The thing that takes a fruit that looked beautiful from the outside and turns it into a disappointment the second the knife goes through. If you have ever grown apples at home, you know how discouraging that is. And the industry has an answer for that too, of course. $15 pheromone traps, $30 sprays, sticky bands. Repeat applications, 7 times a season if you really want to stay on schedule. More buying, more maintenance, more little rituals of dependency. There is an older orchard way. Late winter, before bud break. South or north, the timing shifts a little, but the principle stays the same. While the tree is still quiet, you make a thick paste of borax and warm water. Thick as cream. You take a paintbrush and lay a broad band around the trunk, from about a foot off the ground to somewhere around 3 feet high. That is it, because the larvae overwinter in bark crevices. When they wake and begin moving, they have to cross that trunk, and that pale band turns the trunk into a line they do not survive crossing. One tree, one brush, pennies, is the kind of thing that makes a person stop and think about what else used to be common knowledge and is not anymore. I would not hang that claim on the wrong bulletin number, and I would not pretend every old story deserves blind trust. Orchard and entomology literature from the older USDA era wrote much more plainly about codling moth, appleworm, and home fruit control than most modern retail gardening culture does now. The older world assumed you were trying to understand the pest. The newer world often assumes you are shopping for a system. That is a very different mindset, and really is the larger point of this whole video. You did not lose all of this because it stopped working. Some of it faded because families changed. Some of it faded because fewer people kept notes, or passed things down at the sink, or in the shed, or by the orchard row. And some of it faded because no company on earth makes much money teaching people how to solve a recurring garden problem with one measured spoonful from a $2 box they already own. Not every old remedy deserves revival. I believe that. But some of them do, and the ones that do usually have the same look about them. Plain, specific, measured, quietly effective. So remember the rule: measured use, small doses, targeted application, respect the line, and after that, remember one more thing. Before you hand over $40 for the next bottle, with the glossy promise on it, take one look under your sink. The answer may already be waiting there. And now I want to hear from you. What state are you gardening in? And what pest or problem is giving you the most trouble this year? Put it in the comments. I read them, and sometimes the next video starts with exactly what you tell me there.